refresh that screen. And your live should appear. All right. So in here, go to the sound, view live control room. This is what everybody else sees. It will be behind. That is expected.
Okay. Look at my little Lego. Oops.
Why is it showing your monitor? That's not what it's supposed to be doing. Something changed. Why is it sharing your screen?
It sees it, yeah.
Let me in here. Let me fix this. I don't know why. Don't do that. Where's the settings? Where's all the scene info? That's. I can't find what I'm looking for.
It's displaying the screen.
I'm trying to find the scene overlay so I can change the controls. And guess what's not appearing? So interview chat, you're going to go over here for a minute because they don't need to see that. And Megan apparently got disconnected and is calling back in. Okay, guest is in green room. Just switch back to main and go live. It's no reason farting with this.
What am I doing?
Switch back to main and then unmute yourself up here.
Why?
Like we've been unmuted this whole time. Just go to main and go. We can edit it later.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can. Hey,
Awesome. All right.
we did it.
We did it. We are going live. So if you have YouTube up, it might be a little bit delayed, but that's fine. So this is our first live. And so we don't have a whole lot of time. So I just kind of want to jump into it, Megan. And we can, if we get questions in the chat, I'll try to watch that and we can try to answer those. But if you don't mind,
Sure.
since your podcast episode aired, which that was December 12th, kind of hard to believe,
Yeah.
you have gotten a new job. And I would love to hear a little bit about your new role. And I'm sure that will roll right into some of the things that we want to talk about today about the survey you did, which I'll also let you explain that story again. But tell me about your new job.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks, Megan. I love your show. I push it on everyone I know. I'm like, go listen to Vet Life Reimagined. It's so great. I just love that, you do it from a place of like wanting to get to know other people. I just think it's so important, and it's a huge like connector of people, and encouraging community is really important. Um, so thank you for doing that and being who you are. So last year I launched a survey called "Where Have All the Vet Techs Gone?" And yes, I did sing that song in my head when I named it. Where have all the vet techs gone? Because I was a recruiter and the vet techs were not there. And I started uncovering the issues behind the staffing crisis within veterinary medicine, because that's kind of the type of person I am. I dig and dig and dig. I'm very persistent, looking for answers. And I'm a veterinary technician myself. I'm a credentialed, I'm a registered veterinary technician in the state of Missouri and Kansas. And I love this profession. And it was blowing my mind that people were leaving at the rate that they were. And I was talking to candidates constantly, getting so burnt out that they wanted to leave the field. And they were telling me this. And I felt like I needed to do something. And so I started writing down why I left the floor, and my journey, my professional journey in my career. And I was like, why does it matter what I did? It matters what everybody else did too. So I decided to launch the survey. I got an overwhelming response. I had a little over 900 participants with the first survey. And then I launched a second survey that went more in depth with some of the questions that got almost about 100 responses. So about 1,000 individuals out there that took the survey. The majority of them were credentialed veterinary technicians. And then like the other 35%, I think, were the majority of like practice managers, DVMs, veterinary assistants, and just kind of other veterinary professionals, people in industry as well, who had chimed in to say, hey, I used to be in practice and this is why I left. And essentially what it said was that we need to pay technicians better. We haven't made it a sustainable career option for individuals looking to get into a healthcare industry. And so they answered some questions almost unanimously, which was, I think, really cool and interesting. Everyone essentially agreed that $25 an hour was a great starting place to start a credentialed technician within a veterinary practice. And I agree with that too. I think it's a livable wage. I don't think that it's extravagant by any means, but somebody can afford to go on vacation and maybe buy a house and things like that, as opposed to right now the national average is about $17 an hour. So we got a little bit of stretching to do to get to 25, and more than anything, create sustainable cultures, which has led me on another path of rediscovering what I want to do with my career and how I want to impact others, because I think it's important for all of us to remember why we got into this. I had this fantastic conversation recently with a industry leader. She's a regional director, and not for a group I've ever worked for, but a really, really inspiring person. And she's like, listen, we got in this, we all did, for one reason, and that was the human animal bond. And it just has stuck with me the last week, and it really goes back to everything that we've all been doing in vet med, and why we get up every day, and why we have animals that eat really expensive food, and why we take such great care of them, and why I'm doing this. And it's because I'm here for the human animal bond. And that leads into my new position is still with talent acquisition, but with a company called Pet Folk. We're all a bunch of pet folk, I heard the name and I just was hooked. And I'm actually meeting the CEO tonight, which I'm really excited about. Her name is Dr. Audrey Weistrack, and you met her too, right?
I
Dr.
did at
Sprinkle?
VMX. Yep.
Yes, so she's a very lively person and very inspirational. She started Pet Folk because she wants to address, a lot of the issues plaguing the industry. And one of those being, kind of this lack of hospitality in the industry anymore. We've been so starved of resources that we we had a rough couple of years. I think everybody did, right, during COVID. But I think that it's kind of birthed some new creativity, like in the field, which I'm very excited about. And Pet Folk is creating a entire ecosystem essentially for pet parents, and recreating the experience within the hospital so that it's less stressful, not just for the pet, but for the pet owner. And that's going to make it less stressful on us as professionals. And they've utilized technology to create, a virtual team that triages calls. And we have mobile units, and then we have our brick and mortar clinics that have some pretty phenomenal teams in them. I'm excited to tour them over the next 24 hours. And we're only in Charlotte, but we have some big growth plans. So we're looking for some amazing individuals to be a part of it. So I'm excited. I'm helping them with talent acquisition, and I'm excited for whatever is ahead of us. It's a startup. I mean, it is. It's just us, and we're building it. And I love doing stuff like that. So I'm excited to utilize also, where have all the vet techs gone data. Continuing to utilize it, and then I think that my little group of other philanthropists throughout this organization, or this industry, are talking about maybe launching a new survey. I can't be the sole owner, so I can't say that I came up with the idea, but a lot of people have led me down some pathways of different things that we can do to keep uncovering truths so that we can help pushing, the momentum, keep up the momentum and pushing it forward so that we don't lose it. Because I think a lot of people started talking about the survey, Meagan, after you and I talked about it, and then it got published in today's veterinary business. And so more people started talking about it, and this $25 an hour thing has, I think, really started to catch on. I've had a lot of people reach out to me asking, what we're doing with the data. I have a good friend that is considering helping me publish it. So I don't know. Maybe we're gonna do something with it and make it official. But I think that we're gonna continue to do surveys, just to get a poll and get more people to get involved and saying like what's going on. Because it's one thing to when I came up with the survey idea, it's one thing for us to sit down and say, well, I think this is wrong. It's another to ask who is actually being affected by it. And so I think, bringing it back to the people that are in practice and trying to get an idea of where they're at and giving them something easy to do to contribute, you know what I mean? So that they can feel like their voice is being heard by someone. And it's not for profit. It's not for any other reason than to just, figure out what we can do better. I don't plan on leaving the industry. And so, I'm going to continue to try to make big change happen and do big, hairy, audacious goals. So, I don't, do you know who that's from? BHAGs?
Well, I mean, I've heard it in so many places. I don't know the official origin. What is the origin of the big hairy goals?
It's from Jim Collins. He's an author that I have listened to almost all of his books. He wrote from Good to Great, from Built to Last, and so he's a huge inspiration to me because he talks a lot about. He doesn't really call it servant leadership, but he talks about business tactics that it always comes back to the people. It comes back to who is working behind the scenes to create the service or product that it is, like inspiring those people. And I think I just listened to, or I am almost done with it. It's a really short read. It's called Turning the Flywheel. If you have Audible, it's on Audible. But he talks about in this really short thing, it's kind of I think it's a monogram to from Good to Great. And he talks about, creating something sustainable. So creating a
Mm.
cycle so that we can create sustainable change. And I think that where have all the vet techs gone I think if anything, it's uncovered a lot of kind of big truths that everybody I think knew, but they didn't necessarily want to talk about it. And now there's at least some kind of foundation to stand on to say, yeah, we need to do better and we need to pay our staff a little bit better probably, and maybe think about our leadership and invest more into, I think, learning.
Mm-hmm.
um, that's my take on it. Like you've talked to so many leaders. I mean, you are probably, and I would dare to say, an expert on this, because all of your podcasts I feel like have the same kind of vibe to them. It's all about, these people, these inspirational leaders. I mean, coming into organizations and making it about the people, right?
Exactly.
I don't know, do you agree with that?
I do. And, I just got back from a podcast conference. And of course, when you go to a conference, you get all of these ideas and you're exposed to so many things. And one of them, of course, they're trying to push their, they want to try to get your business. But, they even planted the idea of potentially writing a book one day. And I, I don't think I'm going to do it yet, but I definitely already, since starting this podcast back in April of last year, do see a lot of themes with my guests, and they're all amazing. They're all leaders, and I know that there are leaders all over the industry. And probably, if you're thinking, "Ah, that's not me," it probably is you. And I love that. And when we have platforms where we can talk about the elephants in the room, right? We all know it's there, and we just need to start having very kind, curious conversations about these things. And I think we are going to be able to take our profession into such beautiful places. And because we have such beautiful people as well to do this with, like yourself. And I would love, because I'm so glad that you got some people to reach out to you. I don't know if it was really the podcast episode. I mean, selfishly, I would love to hope that it's doing good and people are seeing that. But I also got a lot of questions from it, including on YouTube. And I think people were curious to know a little bit more about the details. And so we can start specifically
Sure.
with that number amount. So the $25. Now for me, kind of, listening to it multiple times after we recorded it, I I wonder, now maybe that is the or our goal for a national average. If we're coming from 17, I agree with you. Let's try to get the national average to 25. But I also don't want people in ritzy California to think that maybe that's their goal, because cost of living is so different. So for
That's
those
true.
who are, and I've seen this on Reddit, people are actively trying to attract and retain talent in the veterinary industry. So since the number one answer for why did you leave practice did revolve around having a sustainable income to support yourself, to make this a lifelong career so they can stay. Can you speak more to your idea, because we're speaking, across the North America. Hopefully other people are even tuning in as well. But like, when you really are trying to sit down to know how much to offer for a veterinary technician position, and I'm sure there's pieces to this, how do you go about trying to help them know how to come to that answer?
Okay, well, there's two answers to this, because I kind of want to get on my soapbox for just like 30 seconds
Good.
and say we as a profession need to evaluate the actual worth of veterinary technicians, and we need to work on actually monetizing it. You know, we need to figure out like what do they bring into the practice. You know, we've done this with DVMs, you know, because you know they are the driving force in our practices, but you know the veterinary technician profession is still a fairly new one. It has not, you know, been around for hundreds of years. It's less than 100 years old, and you know, I think that we need to keep that in mind, that this is still being professionalized. And I think that some of the organizations like NAFTA and the AVMA, and maybe some of the state organizations that have the resources to do so, they need to launch a research project, or collaborate together and, you know, gather some information. We probably honestly already have the resources to figure this out. Nobody's done it. And Meagan, are you gonna? Yeah, I'm talking to myself. Why don't you just do it? Well, I might. So that might be the next big fun thing I do on the side. But we need to figure out what a technician brings into practice first of all, and then we can actually talk about how we pay them and how we should compensate them. Until that happens, until we have that, we need some kind of band-aid to put on that, right? And this is my area of expertise. I have been, you know, doing talent acquisition, I feel like my entire career, because I didn't realize that that is what I am very, very good at. But it's honestly just connecting people. I just talk a lot. Like it's just, you know, it's a great excuse to talk to everyone and find out what drives them. And that's what drives me. And so I found out I love to interview people, probably a lot like yourself, Meagan, because I would love to have the tables turned one day. And so I think that you have to take in cost of living, right? Okay, so we need to, you know, evaluate your cost of living in your area. We have done studies like this in my previous positions, you know, where we had clinics that were deep in Colorado, where, you know, they're in a valley and it's very treacherous to get to when they live only like, you know, 5 miles, but that may take them 3 hours in snowy conditions. And you know, cost of living is extraordinary there, and so we have to be adaptable to that. So I think, yes, you make a great point. I think that we absolutely need to, you know, take into account geography and the cost of living. So once that is done and you've established what, you know, lower middle income, you know, a decent salary would support, like what do most normal people live on, and then you have to think to yourself truly. And I think that we miss this in business. I've seen so many leaders miss this, but you can look at your data all day long and you can analyze all the facts, but how do you want to take care of your employees? How do you want them to live? And because however they live and how happy they are at home is going to be reflected in their work. I mean, that is scientific fact. So I think that you need to establish what kind of service do you offer. You know, are you a nonprofit and you have some constraints, or are you a high-end veterinary clinic that offers some specialty services? And then, you know, once you establish kind of your cost and where you fall in that business model, you can decide, okay, we can offer, you know, within our pay band and establish those. I think that pay bands are important. I think that diversity, equity, inclusion, you know, studies and the research suggests that establishing pay bands and uniform interview processes can help increase DEI and and honestly create better cultures, because you're not choosing a person solely based on their personality. You're evaluating them as a professional, and I think that that's where we go wrong a lot of times in vet med. Like we don't make it a uniform process and we let our biases take over, and so we need to strip away those biases and decide that we're going to approach it like a business, and make those standards. So there's not an easy answer to this, obviously. You know, and once you have all of that, you know, in account, look at your profit loss statements, look at your income, look at your revenue, and look at the equity across your practice and establish pay bands for every single group of individuals. You can do this for small hospitals too. This does not have to be a corporate thing. You can apply this to your own business practices. But I would highly encourage, do some research on your area, establish what kind of individuals you're wanting to attract. If you are wanting to pay people $13 an hour, you're probably not going to get the most experienced bloke on the street, right? You're going to get somebody that's probably new to vet med, and that's okay. Do you have the resources to train that person to make them successful? I think that there's so many things that go into that. So there's not a simple answer. But establish a cost of living and your geography, and I think that you're headed in the right direction. But I think that we need to take into account a lot more than that. I think we need to take into account, are you basing your accounting practices on old school 20-year-old statistics? Are we relevant? Are you, is your payroll, maybe your payroll's over 40%, but maybe you want it that way. You can have a sustainable business model and pay your people really well. But it's just that balance and figuring out how to get there. So, I mean, I wish I could just go into these practices and be like, this is what you should do.
Well, I kind of like the idea of challenging individual clinics to, going back to that research that you mentioned, really looking down and seeing the value that a vet tech brings. Even I think we all know on a on a clinical level they bring a lot, but if you really want to get down to the numbers, and maybe people will reach out to you to brainstorm exactly how
Sure.
you can do that, right? Because measurements are very valuable. We're not always really good at them in veterinary medicine, so I'm always interested to learn how to better measure results, right? But
Yeah,
with
absolutely.
we only have a few more minutes, so I kind of want to look at it from the other perspective. So we talked about the top response for vet techs who left the practice or veterinary medicine, maybe at all. It was financial. So from all of your years in recruiting and talent, what are the things that keep veterinary technicians in a practice? So let's kind of look at the other side. What can we do to attract good candidates and keep them?
Number one, a good hard look in the mirror. I think that this is hard advice, and it's not fun and it's not pretty, but you need to look in the mirror. And if you are in leadership, or you're a practice owner or a practice manager, honestly, a lead on the floor, even a vet tech in your practice, whoever you are, if you're working in practice and you're helping with the initiative of talent acquisition, and you're trying to help attract talent and good people, and you want to work with good people, which is, I think, I hope everyone, right? You need to take a long, hard look in the mirror. I don't like doing it. It's uncomfortable, right? Nobody does, but I see so often that it's not necessarily the individuals in the practice, it's usually leadership. That is the reason that usual, complaints come in, or, the multitude of candidates that I've talked to, why are you thinking about a move? Oh, well, I don't really agree with management. And so what that tells me is that number one, technicians, and I think that I said this the last time, but we are all part of the solution, and we are also part of the problem. I talk to individuals a lot that, well, I didn't get along with so-and-so in that practice, or I didn't get along with so-and-so in that practice. And when I ask them, well, have you ever taken any conflict resolution classes or communication classes, or, read a book about how to improve your communication skills so that you could overcome that? The usual answer is no. And so, we have a personal responsibility to look in the mirror as well and decide, are you actually part of the problem, or are you part of the solution? And, if you have been a part of the problem, that's okay. That's the first step forward to progress, is acknowledging that. And this is really hard for management. It's really hard for practice owners, especially because they've worked really hard to build what they have. Like they have bled and sweat and just long nights and, you know, probably emergencies and on calls and, you know, Lord knows what they have been through, you know, if they've owned a practice for a long time or even a short time. It has been a stressful couple of years. And so, you know, we get this kind of augmented reality that like we've overcome this and you know, we're, you know, doing so good and everything's great. And why wouldn't anybody want to work at my practice? Everyone loves it here. And you know, that's the kind of person that is probably going to fail in the long run because sometimes we get so excited about the success we lose sight of, you know, taking others advice or stop and reflecting on our own you know, leadership values and how we manage and how we affect other people. And that doesn't, this doesn't just, you know, include management, it includes everyone that works with other people. This is hard for me to do, but you know, I do it. I would also encourage 360-degree feedback. I think that done correctly, it can be a really valuable tool, but you have to make sure that when you implement it, you're actually going to stick with it and you're going to ask for feedback in a very, you know, open, honest, and not scary way. You know, some clinics, if they decide to change cultures and they want to start doing this, I would highly recommend bringing in a consultant to help them with this process because I think that it's beneficial to have someone there that's guiding them because, you know, one and done, I'm telling you, they bring somebody in there that knows what they're doing. They can help them through this process and they can all learn from it. And it can really transform a team. So, you know, if you're having trouble retaining staff, you know, look in the mirror. If it is truly about a competitive area, because I've seen this in areas where like there were great clinics. I mean, it wasn't a, you know, it wasn't a retention issue necessarily. It was just a location. It was really competitive. Or, you know, vice versa. There's been locations that were really remote where, you know, like it was a phenomenal facility. And there's just nothing around there. There's this amazing hospital in Bemidji, Minnesota, that is like this amazing 10,000 square foot like rehab center, like specialty ER stuff. Like it's awesome, but it serves like, you know, a huge area, and so it's just very hard to get talent up there. So I think that you have to kind of, you know, take all of that into account and then decide, okay, we looked ourselves in the mirror, we're doing a good job, how can we be more competitive? I think a lot of veterinary technicians are women. I mean, that's just, we dominate the industry, that's just kind of a fact. And I think remembering that we're human and being more flexible with scheduling and deciding to close on weekends. If you're having a really hard time, you know, especially if you are in a rural area, deciding that your staff comes first. And you know, dependent on what you have available for staffing, cutting hours during the week, or maybe you close for 2 hours on a Wednesday to allow your staff to have a meeting, and you know, during that time, you know, nobody's doing treatments, you know, everybody's safe in kennels and it's time to focus and listen and talk to each other. There's tons of creative ways. You just have to step out your comfort zone, because when I start bringing this stuff up, I think one of the biggest like pieces of feedback I get are like, well, you know, that's just going to be too hard, or you know, they make a list of excuses of why they can't implement these things because of XYZ, and the list just keeps going on with the excuses. But you know, okay, well, I'm trying to help. So you have to break out of that shell of like, I've done things this way forever and I'm going to keep doing them this way because it's my safe zone. They have to kind of stretch a little bit. And it may mean having some hard conversations, and it might, you know, it might end in some people leaving because it makes them uncomfortable to have that kind of feedback and that kind of relationship with others, and that might scare them, and that's okay. I think you just have to buckle up for change. And I know that we're out of time, and I could just keep going about this, Megan. I'm sorry.
You're fine. No, I think this is it's a great place, because as I try to personally do, and I encourage everyone to do, is at the end of the day, what can I or you as an individual control? And most of it is about our own selves and our own personal growth and development. So if it is reading a book, or I do challenge everybody, whether you own a hundred practices or it's your first day in veterinary medicine, to ask for feedback. And I think it was you who posted on LinkedIn that an
Oh, yep,
applicant
yep.
had
Yeah, I
wh-
always
go ahead, sorry.
no, I always give it back. If they ask for it, I want to tell them, because that is how you grow. And I am been so incredibly fortunate to have mentors in my life and trusted advisors that have not let me just, go on with my crazy self. They pulled me aside and they told me how I affected them and others. And I stopped and I listened, and it was tough, but I will tell you that I wouldn't regret anything. I would want everyone to tell me exactly what they thought, because otherwise I honestly cannot grow. And I know that for a fact now, and it hurts the first couple of times, but you get better at it. It doesn't get like easier necessarily. You just get better at saying, okay, that is why, and I can control that, and I'm going to do better. So, and that's all anybody can do, right?
Exactly.
So, okay, I have to run,
You
but
do.
it's so great to see you. All right, but I have to go. I don't know how to get out of this thing. Let's
You're
see.
fine. I just want to say
Bye,
to
Megan.
everybody,
Thank
if
you
you
again.
you're welcome. Anybody who wants to hear more from Meagan Parks, make sure that you check out her podcast episode. So if you want to do it on audio, it released back on December 12th. So take a listen. And it is also here on YouTube as well. So make sure you go find Meagan Parks' Where Have the Vet Techs Gone episode. And thank you for everyone who is watching this. I'm so excited. This is our first live. We will get it better each time, and I would love to do that with you. So again, thank you for joining us. Until next time, have a wonderful night. Bye, guys.